when you think about the word history, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? Well, we may all have different answers, but I am sure that we can agree on this one thing, though. History is boring. Well, maybe not all here agree with me, because I totally forgot that I'm at a TEDx conference. So as the historian Dao Dantron once said, history is taught to not be dumb. History is supposed to guide the people. But these days, sadly though, history has been relegated to just another subject that you were forced in high school and never to be useful again. Speaking of high school, that reminds me of the history classes in my childhood. I remember having a small little notebook just to memorize the stuff. I used to write down kings' names, war names, dates, locations in that small book. At that time, I thought I was doing what a top student would do. But in retrospect, it was a vain effort. I didn't learn anything from doing that. But full disclosure though, I finished school here in Myanmar, but I am sure we might share similar experiences when it comes to history classes, right? In the book, Rebooting Social Studies by Greg Milo, there is a very interesting argument. Let's say we want some students to learn about King Min. For those of you who don't know who Min is, he is a Burmese king who led the major reforms in the late 19th century together with his younger brother. And he is quite notorious for having so many wives and children. So the main question is, does it really matter whether we remember the day he was born, or the name of his ministers, or the number of wives? But instead, we should be focusing on he having that many children led to purges and strikes that ultimately led to the annexation by the British. These days, the curriculum is more focused on content, such as dates, names, and locations, and less on important skills such as research, critical thinking, writing, and creativity. Let me tell you a story. I went to an engineering school here in Myanmar. But wait, I am still a history buff. So we have a small group of friends that we would talk about history stuff all day, like American Revolution, Renaissance, or World War II. You know what we have in common? We play lots of video games. Games like Hearts of Iron, Age of Empires, and of course, is Assassin's Creed. Why though? I wonder. Turns out, in the games, we are more than mere observers. We are creating histories. I can say, we are creating alternate histories. So let's define alternate histories. Alternate history is a speculative, fictional account of a real historical event with a slight twist of what-if scenario. Some examples might include, what if the Axis won the World War II? Not a good scenario. What if the President Kennedy survived the assassination? Or how about the Carthaginian conquer the Romans? But you know what? They are still fictional and speculations. It is impossible to prove a fictional statement. I mean, I can say something outrageous like, after President Kennedy survived, the Vietnam War escalated to World War III, or even more outrageous, I can say some aliens invaded the Earth during President Kennedy's term. I can say that. I think that is one of the most controversial aspects of alternate history, and is one of the primary sources of scrutiny from the mainstream historians. Okay, now that I've talked about the downsides, I think we can move on and apply it to a real scenario. Let's say we want some students to learn about the Prince Canal, assassination of him, and the general politics of the late 19th century Burma. As some context, the Prince Canal is actually the younger brother of the middleman that I mentioned earlier, and he is well known for his major reformation efforts. So okay, back on track. In the traditional method, we would memorize that the prince was assassinated on August 2nd, 1866, and then we might learn that some events after that. Spoiler alert: Burma was annexed. So we just learned some events, no background, no context, right? Okay, what if we apply the what if scenario? Okay, from here on, I'm gonna need to make a disclaimer. I'm gonna be making some of my own interpretation of history, and you are more than welcome to disagree with me, because after all, that is the point of alternate history. Okay? So let's start with why. Why would the prince survive? For that, my imagination is that the prince's efforts to diplomacy were quite fruitful, that we are actually good friends with the United States. So in this scenario, he would have known that even the President Lincoln was assassinated a year earlier in 1865, so that, I don't know, he would have probably improved the palace security. Okay, this sounds quite fictional, but there is a historical fact behind that, because Burma actually tried to establish diplomatic contact with the United States, and even the students were sent to the States as early as the 1850s. So now, what will happen after? One thing for sure, middlemen will be abdicated, and the prince will become the king, because middleman was well known for being too soft by his contemporaries. So how about the direction that the new king would take? For that, we can look at Japan, because Japan and Burma share a very similar experience. They are a religious conservative kingdom at a geopolitically strategic location. In fact, I actually imagine that Kanao Mindo will actually be good friends with Meiji of Japan. So we can think of like Burma will be technologically advanced with. We can imagine like Burma will be technologically advanced with modern political system, economy, and of course, no one will be wearing longis like right now, most people right now, because actually they didn't wear kimonos immediately after the Meiji Restoration. Despite the fact that alternate history have a lot of shortcomings and its own controversies, because from the earlier examples, we can conclude what makes alternate history good. One thing is the why of the scenario and the premise must be based in real and plausible history. I mean, I cannot say something ridiculous like, what if Napoleon invaded Japan? Because he could not. And another thing is that no funny stuff, no crazy stuff, like no time travel, because time travel was implemented in a lot of alternate history scenarios. Just plain old what-if scenarios. So next time when you think of a powerful and defining moment in history, ask yourself this question: what if? Just what if this event is different? And next thing you know, you'll be writing your own alternate history novel full of rich and inconspicuous little details, and you would have done an analysis of a real historical event. You can be your own armchair historian right now, and if you can do that, that's why my talk has served its purpose. So thank you and good luck.